September 10th, 2025. A packed auditorium in Utah. Students, lights, cameras, and Charlie Kirk, the young conservative activist who divided an entire country, answers questions on stage. Suddenly, a roar. A single gunshot pierces the air. Kirk puts his hand to his chest, falls backward, and chaos erupts. Screams, people running, fear in every corner. The shot didn't come from the audience. It was a sniper hidden in a nearby building who, with a bolt-action rifle, turned a political debate into a bloody scene. Charlie Kirk dies on the way to the hospital. The shooter escapes, and America wakes up with a haunting question. How could this happen on a college campus? Today you'll learn the story behind the shooting that shook the nation. A murder that revealed the darkest part of American polarization, and that still leaves more questions than answers. Charlie Kirk, the Utah shooting, the day of the shooting. On September 10th, 2025, in Salt Lake City, Utah native Charlie Kirk, conservative activist and founder of Turning Point USA, took to a university stage to participate in an event on his American comeback tour. The auditorium was packed. Hundreds of students were waiting to see him in his most controversial format, Prove Me Wrong. A space in which he answered direct, often confrontational questions. Outside, as usual, a small group of protesters accused him of bringing hate to campus. It all seemed like a normal event. Kirk talked about politics, took questions about immigration and gun rights. Just as he was answering one of those questions, the unthinkable happened. At 8:17 p.m., a gunshot pierced the air. The sound was sharp and loud, and in an instant the audience went from debate to hysteria. Kirk put his hand to his chest, fell backward, and lay sprawled on the stage. For a moment there was silence. Then screams. Some thought it was part of the show, until blood began to stain his white shirt. People ran for the exits. Others threw themselves to the floor. Private security guards tried unsuccessfully to identify the source of the shot. No one inside the auditorium had a gun. The shot had come from outside. Police would later confirm that the shot was fired with a long-range bolt-action rifle from a building near the campus, aimed precisely at the stage. Paramedics arrived within minutes and transported Kirk by ambulance, but he died before reaching the hospital. The news spread across the country in seconds. Charlie Kirk, killed during an event in Utah. The shooter, however, managed to escape. A suspect was briefly detained but released due to lack of evidence. To this day, the identity of the perpetrator remains unclear. A divided country and theories. The murder of Charlie Kirk during an event in Salt Lake City was not an isolated incident, but rather a symptom of a country in crisis. To understand why what happened, we must look beyond the shooting, at the political climate, the public figure he represented, the security lapses, and the narrative that was constructed immediately afterward. Kirk's death not only marked a turning point in the lives of his followers, it also sparked a national debate about political violence, ideological polarization, and the future of American democracy. The immediate impact. Minutes after the shooting, the news spread like wildfire. Television networks interrupted their regular programming with the phrase, "Breaking news, Charlie Kirk shot in Utah." On social media, hashtags like #Charlie Kirk and #Utah shooting became a worldwide trend. Videos recorded by attendees showing the chaos and screams after the shooting went viral. The entire country was in shock. For millions of people, regardless of their position on him, it was inconceivable that a political speaker would be gunned down in the middle of a public event at a university. Kirk, hero or villain? The explanation for what happened inevitably revolves around who Kirk was and what he stood for. For his followers, he was a defender of freedom, a brave man who stood up to the progressive dictatorship on campus. For his detractors, he was a provocateur who used his platform to sow hatred against immigrants, minorities, and social movements. Kirk was never an elected politician, but he had a real influence on American politics. His lectures, his podcast, and his organization, Turning Point USA, shaped the opinions of thousands of young people. Becoming a symbol comes at a price. It transforms you into a target, a planned crime. The initial investigations made it clear that the murder was not improvised. The shot was fired with a long-range bolt-action rifle, a weapon that requires precision and preparation. The shooter's position was carefully chosen, a nearby building with a direct line of sight to the stage. The shooting occurred at the moment of maximum media attention, when Kirk was center stage, under the spotlight, answering questions. This indicates premeditation. It was not an impulsive attack by an angry audience member. It was a calculated act for maximum exposure and symbolic effect. The international press, the murder crossed borders. In Europe, media outlets spoke of the fragility of American democracy. In Latin America, analysts compared it to the political violence experienced in countries with less institutional stability. In Asia, headlines highlighted access to weapons as a key factor in the tragedy. The message was clear. What happened in Utah wasn't a simple crime. It reflected the deterioration of political debate in the United States. The security debate. One of the big questions was, how could something like this happen? Security experts pointed out several points. Kirk's events didn't have the same protocols as those for sitting politicians. Public access was relatively easy. Buildings near the stage weren't inspected. After the murder, several universities cancelled political events or increased campus security. The feeling was that no one was safe. The effect on society. The assassination of Charlie Kirk had an immediate effect on American society. 1. It deepened polarization. The right turned him into a martyr. The left saw it as proof of the chaos generated by extreme rhetoric. 2. It generated fear. Students, teachers, and event organizers began to wonder if it was worth continuing to invite controversial figures. 3. It fueled mistrust, and many distrusted the official version, believing in conspiracy theories. Others accused the media of manipulating the narrative. Historical parallels. Several analysts compared the case with previous political assassinations in the US. John F. Kennedy, 1963, shot at a public event. Robert Kennedy, 1968, assassinated in the midst of an election campaign. Martin Luther King Jr., 1968, victim of a sniper. Although Kirk was not an elected politician, his cultural influence placed him in that same symbolic category, figures whose assassination shakes the nation. The immediate legacy. Kirk's death left a profound mark on the conservative movement. Thousands of young people remembered him as a cultural hero. His podcast and speeches were widely shared after his death. Turning Point USA promised to continue his legacy, organizing more events in his name. In practice, the murder didn't silence his voice, but amplified it. The shooting that ended Charlie Kirk's life was more than a crime. It held up a mirror to a divided country where political differences ceased to be resolved in debates and became confrontations with deadly consequences. The question that remains is a disturbing one. Was this the end of an era or the beginning of an even more dangerous political violence? On September 10, 2025, a bolt-action rifle turned a debate into a tragedy. Charlie Kirk died on stage in front of hundreds of people, and with it, the United States woke up to an uncomfortable reality. Politics is no longer fought with words alone. His killer remains faceless, but the message is etched in the country's memory. When polarization reaches its peak, democracy becomes a battlefield. And on that battlefield, no one is safe.